Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about specifically what it means to have your Venus in Sagittarius or Venus in the 9th house. My name is Brandon. This is part of a much larger series I'm doing here on YouTube where I go specifically over which each planet in each single sign and house. So I'll be talking about specifically in this video Venus in Sagittarius or Venus in the 9th house. I have a playlist down below where I've spoken about everything prior to Sagittarius and the 9th house. So all those videos are down there. So if you have any placements prior to that, so anything in Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, or Leo, Virgo, Libra, and Scorpio, those are going to be listed down below, as well as anything between the 1st and the 8th house. Those are all listed in that playlist down there. So also, if you're kind of confused, that's what I'm talking about, you don't know anything about astrology, and you are confused as to what is this man talking about? Do I have a Venus in Sagittarius? Do I have in the 9th house? I don't know. There's a link down below as well you can use to check out to generate your birth chart to get a better idea of if you have your Venus in the 9th house or in Sagittarius. So that is a lot of what we have to talk about here today. I do have timestamps down below as well. We're able to kind of skip to what you talk, like to what, when I talk about what. So I'll be talking about Venus specifically in astrology first, and then I will talk about specifically Venus in Sagittarius and then Venus in the 9th house. So feel free to check those things out as you have them. I would definitely recommend watching the sign placement you have Venus in first, as opposed to the house placement. And you can kind of go back and forth and kind of help put together the pieces within this particular really complex world that is astrology. So without further ado, without any more yapping, we are going to go on to and speak about what Venus means in astrology. Okay, so with Venus in astrology, we have a lot of obviously beautiful things that we can talk about here. Venus rules everything to do with receptivity, everything to do with our finances, everything to do with our money, our values, our morals, our ethics, our relationships as well. Venus is the planet of love, the planet of relational values. It is one of our personal planets, so it is going to be one that is going to affect us way more personally. And so you'll see that when we talk about Venus, we're really talking about a lot of relational kind of dynamics, as well as financial and moral and ethical kind of dynamics interwoven into that. So just know that that's part of what Venus tends to do and tends to bring is a lot of focuses around money and finances, and anything that is also art-based is also very Venusian. Venus naturally rules, specifically Libra and Taurus. So if we talk about Venus in the sign opposite of those, so if we put Venus in a Martian sign, so in either Scorpio or Aries, it's not going to be as comfortable as it would be in the signs it rules, which are Taurus and Libra. In addition to that, Venus is considered to be exalted in the sign of Pisces and is considered to be fallen in the sign of Virgo. So you're welcome to check those videos out. Of all the signs that I mentioned here, outside of Venus and Pisces, I have not recorded that video as of yet. So Venus in Sagittarius has no real dignity in that regard, that it's not really connected to anything really prominently within the natal kind of, or astrological kind of framework with that. But there's a lot we're going to be talking about here as well. A couple things I want to bring up when it comes to this. If you do have your Venus retrograde, very important. I would recommend that you check those things out. Venus does not typically go retrograde in Sagittarius that often, so I wouldn't really think that many of you would even have that, but definitely worth noting. Also, if you're born at night, meaning that your sun is below the horizon, so in the houses 1 through 6 or possibly 7, there's going to be a stronger inclination that Venus is going to have in your chart, a lot more power, as well as obviously if you're a Taurus rising or a Libra rising, you are going to have a lot of focus around Venusian things, so Venus can be really important to you, as well as if you are a Taurus or Libra sun. So all that out of the way, let's get started. Let's talk about specifically what Venus means in Sagittarius. Okay, so we have Venus in the sign of Sagittarius. So Venus in Sagittarius, this is going to be Venus in Jupiter's domain. So this is actually going to be a really positive sort of Venus typically. You can see a lot of really optimistic things as we talk about Venus and we talk about specifically Sagittarius as well. There's a lot of positivity, a lot of love, a lot of relational kind of values, a lot of really positive things that we tend to associate with this. Because Venus rules all things relative to money and finances, in the sign of Sagittarius, you can tend to see some very interesting spending habits where Venus and Sag can kind of have overabundance of spending and kind of not really know the limits. But the thing with Sagittarius that I've spoken about in previous videos here is that Sagittarius is the sign that really speaks to finding one's meaning and belief and faith, and a lot of different cultural things as well. So when you think about Venus in the sign of Sag, the things that you spend your money on need to be meaningful. They need to be educational. They need to be important to you. They need to be culturally diverse as well. There needs to be a sense of exploring your cultural values. Venus in Sag is probably one of the most common placements that I see that indicates a foreign partner, right? Or a partner of a different culture. Because when Venus, the planet of love, is in the sign relative to other cultures, you can imagine how much it wants to be in a relationship with other people. But at the same time, as it relates to finances, Venus in Sagittarius really, really strives to make a lot of money, enjoy the money they're making, find meaning behind why they're making the money they're making, how they're making the money they're making. That's another thing as well. Venus in Sag is really great at manifesting quite a lot of money. We can have a little bit too much manifestation power as well. That's something that you can see with Sagittarius, which is why there's an excess. So there is something with Venus in Sag where there is a kind of a probably one of the most likely correlated to spending a lot of money, overabundance, overindulgence, and it comes from a place because you just want more. You want more. You strive for more. If we saw Venus with Sag with the North Node, that would be a lot of abundance, like overabundance of things, and a lot of cultural things as well there. Now, I want to bring this up as well because this has been coming up a little bit more recently. So if you are a Gen Z person watching this, which most people are, that watch this, I've had kind of a wide range of ages, but majority are going to be that Gen Z age at this point. And Venus in Sagittarius, if you have Venus in Sagittarius and you are a Gen Z, you also have Pluto in Sagittarius, which means you have a Venus-Pluto combination going on, right? Which is pretty intense. It makes the relationship life and the financial life and the value-seeking life very intense, very dramatic, very charged, and very much something that needs to be really emphasized and understood in a very deep, transformative, intense, and triggering way, unfortunately. So Venus-Pluto in Sag, there's definitely some sort of interesting relationship with, not specifically foreigners, but mentors and teachers and religious ideologies and things like that. So when we have Venus and Pluto in Sagittarius, you are likely going to have like quite a interesting relationship with religion, spirituality, the bigger pictures of things, and you're going to typically have that come through some really intense relationship with Venus, Pluto in Sagittarius. So just know that there's a purification that needs to happen with Venus in the sign of Sagittarius when it's with Pluto. And it's about really deeply understanding your values, understanding your morals, understanding how you make your money, understanding the worth that you have to give the world. Venus-Pluto is very much this story about really not feeling like you're valued enough because you're trying to kind of like scratch this sort of like scar within you. What's interesting is, I don't know if any of you have watched The Magicians, the TV show. It was on Sci-Fi like forever ago, but it was amazing. It's one of my favorite TV shows. And if you have not watched it, spoiler alert, there is a character in there that is quite Venus-Pluto, and specifically Venus-Pluto in Sag, which I think is really unique just to think about the archetype in that way. Where essentially what ends up happening is she experiences very intense trauma. That is also Venus-Pluto, by the way. The specific trauma she experiences is very Venus-Pluto. And through that process of recovering her power and really sitting in that pain and really transmuting that and transforming that, she becomes one of, if not the most powerful characters in the show. And it really speaks to the Venus-Pluto archetype of really purifying one's values, one's money, what one really has to offer to the world. It's really purification. And it's unfortunately typically through some sort of really intense trauma. If you do have Venus-Pluto in Sagittarius, and the other reason why it's interesting with the specific show and the specific character is her way of processing it and getting through it is specifically studying and learning and connecting bigger dots and bigger things and understanding and really trying to break apart the logic and the laws behind why that had to happen, why things happened within that universe. And so I would urge you to, if you have Venus, Pluto, and Sag, very niche, but check into that specific story. It's pretty intense, but it has a lot of power and it has a lot of really great messaging around the empowerment process relative to trauma. Specifically, like I said, the Venus-Pluto trauma in that regard. So very powerful, very much in love with it. Favorite show, and it just felt relevant because one of the main characters feels very Venus-Pluto Saggy. Now, off of the Venus-Pluto thing, because I know not all of you are Gen Z. I kind of mentioned it earlier just now, but about the Venus and Sag, where it's really academic. It's really like trying to find the truth, trying to find the answers. And so there is something here where there's some interesting relationships that come in that are typically very insightful, very knowledgeable, very helpful with Venus and Sag. And like I said, there is something with the higher learning, the college degree, the studying, the higher education that Venus and Sag kind of allows, where it allows you to have a lot of opportunity. It allows you to go to school. It allows you to study what you want to study. Obviously, Venus's relation to other parts of the chart is going to definitely like layer this. So knowing what Venus is aspected to, right? Obviously, if Venus is with Pluto, kind of talk about that here. But then also, if Venus is square to Saturn or square to Mars or whatever it may be, or in a certain angular house, like it's going to have a lot of different angles to it and a lot of different ways that it can manifest. So be very aware of like what your Venus specifically is doing in Sagittarius. Also, look to see what your Jupiter sign is. That's a really big part of this. All the Sagittarius placements, it's really important to look to your Jupiter for a better idea of what your purpose is, or how you're prescribing meaning, I guess, to your values and how those are translating. With Venus and Sag as well, there's an aspect of translation, an aspect of cultural translation and cultural connection, and there's a sense of tradition and ancestry that is really, really powerful and potent in the Venus Sagittarius kind of archetype. So just be aware of that as well. There's kind of this this deeper kind of quality that Venus and Sag can bring, of really being able to have a drive towards something higher, a drive towards something bigger and more profound, and the next truth and the next answer and the next thing to study and the next logical thing, right? Very beautiful, very powerful. And Venus wants to have beauty in that regard. And there is something to be said about the cultural kind of connections and the cultural kind of conversations and the value that one finds in other cultures. And I think there is not just a relational value that you can find from other cultures, because there is likely some sort of like cultural difference that you're looking to kind of get in different relationships that are outside of your culture. But like studying abroad is a big thing for Sagittarius, like going and studying something different, going and, going into a different sort of school or a different country even, all because you want to learn something, right? There's a lot of beauty with Sagittarius that I really enjoy seeing what happens when Venus is in this sign. It allows for a lot of luxury, a very luxurious life. But once again, it's relative to that Jupiter placement and what Jupiter is also doing. It's very hard to kind of limit the astrology to one specific placement and try and find out, oh, okay, well, like, what are we, what do I believe in? What are the other layers to this, right? Because like I just mentioned earlier, if you had Venus, Pluto, very different story than if you just have Venus and Sag and it's with Jupiter or whatever it may be, right? Very different stories here. Now, what's interesting with Venus Sag as well, there is a very not really settle down energy when it comes to relationships as well as finances, right? Because Sag is a mutable kind of fire sign. And what that means is it kind of just starts a bunch of different stuff, does a bunch of different stuff, doesn't really go anywhere necessarily, doesn't really finish, but it's because it's wanting to learn more, it's wanting to expand more, it's wanting to try more, it's wanting to grow more. And so when we have Venus and Sag, they can want to go and study these things, they can want to have all these relationships, they can want to, like go and have all these different things because it's all novelty. There's a sense of novelty that's really a big part of Sagittarius, where they really want to have a really deep desire to connect to the next thing, the next thought, the next idea, the next cultural thing, right? There's a lot of those sorts of doubling ups that you can see here with Venus and Sag, where they want to just keep doubling up and doubling up and doubling down and going further into something, and maybe then trying this, then trying that. And it's because they're trying to find the answers for what they really love and why they love what they love. So there is meaning behind why you go after what you go after, why you pursue what you pursue, why you spend money on what you spend your money on. But with Venus and Sag, there's a lot of like, they never necessarily stop to think about that all the time. They don't really be like, oh, well, is this why I like this, or is this why I like this, right? And they just kind of keep going and keep going and keep going. And so it's a lot about being able to sit and reflect. And that's also very like Saturnian as well. It's very much putting on the brakes. And so also when you have a lot of Sagittarius placements, looking to your Saturn is also going to help you kind of understand more of what you can use to help kind of bring that real big faith and belief and meaning down to reality, right? How can I ground this really amazing idea and this really amazing cultural thing that I really believe in? And there's a lot of religion here as well. There's a lot of like ideologies and religious kind of context here. And so typically with Venus and Sag, you'll have a pretty positive relationship with religious upbringings, but there can always be that kind of like overabundance of religious truths where we're like, okay, I'm just surrounded with a bunch of people that have a bunch of different beliefs and you know, going to like Sunday school or going to church all the time or going and having these very different cultural views. And we'll see this more with like Saturn and Sag specifically, but with Venus and Sag, it can make that kind of cultural kind of process and kind of understand your culture as well as your specific belief system. It can make that a little bit smoother with Venus and Sag. But when you have Sagittarius placements, even if it is hard as Saturn, there's still an aspect of learning your truth and speaking your truth and being able to decide what that is and align, specifically with Venus, align your relationships, align what you spend your money on with those values, with those belief systems. Why do you want this partner? Do you want this partner because they can fly around the country? Do you want this partner because they can teach you something really, really inspiring? Do you want this partner because you see them as a mentor? Do you want this partner because, you know, they are a whole different culture or whatever, right? There's so many different reasons as to why you may want the partner you want. Do you want to get out of your, do you just want to get out of where you live? Do you just want to go and get some money, right? That's one thing you can see here with Venus and Sag, where they kind of can just get a bunch of money, especially when it's with Pluto. They can kind of just get a bunch of funding and a bunch of like kind of support from financial kind of things. It's really powerful with the Venus and Sag. And so there is this sense of like sugaring relationships that can kind of come in as well. I tend to see that the most with Venus and Sag because they're wanting to experience more and experience more and experience more. So just know that that's an aspect of this as well that can happen. But it can also be just a very giving and very philanthropic placement as well with Venus in Sagittarius. It can want to give and love and enjoy relationships as well as the finances. And so what they spend their money on could be very important to them, be very philosophical, and be very helpful, right? They want to bless people with their blessings. And so I find with Sag, it's all about finding the meaning behind why you're doing what you're doing. And in Venus's case, it's going to be the relationships. It's going to be the art that you make as well. Like the art, if you were an artist and you have Venus and Sag, it's very inspiring. It's very, powerful in a way that lightens the mood, right? And that's the thing that I think with Sagittarius, and I didn't really speak about this with Mercury, mainly because that's my own placement and I yapped about that for a while, but with Sagittarius placements, there's this light that Sagittarius has, and this lightness, this kind of comedy that you can see within Sagittarius's archetype that allows us to lighten ourselves, to find optimism, to find hope. And it comes between Scorpio and Capricorn, which are a Martian and a Saturnian, or a Plutonic and a Saturnian ruled sign. And so they're very intense. And we have Jupiter right in the middle that's like trying to kind of navigate between these two really intense, kind of heavier and more difficult, traditionally difficult kind of signs. And Sagittarius is like, no, like there's meaning behind this. There's hope. There's something to believe in, right? So with Venus, it has this aspect of just really believing in something and believing in a person, believing in love, right? Believing that there's someone out there for you, and you just have to find them. And it becomes a journey. It becomes a kind of just pilgrimage, if you will, as well, and just having fun with that process, enjoying that process. It's very light, right? Venus and Sag can have a way of lighting up relationships, and they can pivot at one point in their life to become the mentor within their relationships. They can become the one that teaches people about what it is that they believe in. It's a very beautiful placement in a lot of ways. And so Venus and Sag, if you have this placement, I would love to hear how this has landed with you, and how you've found meaning in your relationships, and how you found meaning with what you spend your money on, and and what it is that you have enjoyed the most out of life, and that thrill and that chase, or the kind of like going after the next nugget of knowledge, right? Or the next person that may have that nugget of knowledge, or the next investment, or the next idea, right? Or the next thing you want to study. Like, I would love to hear your kind of cultural connections, as well as your relationship lives, for whatever you feel comfortable with, but just sharing that. Because there's an optimism with Sagittarius, and a positivity that is really beautiful in so many ways, that I really enjoy when we see Venus and Sag, because it is probably one of the most positive ones of Sagittarius signs here. The sun does really well here, and obviously so does Jupiter, but Venus in this specific sign does quite well. It really does enjoy the ability to be able to love openly and love freely, and have a faith about it, and a sense of belief and meaning that it gives to its relationships. It's really powerful, and it's about what you use that for, and what optimism you provide for people through your relationships, through your love, through your finances, what you give, right? And also, you're going to receive a lot of really positive things, or really, inspirational, or really, metaphorical, or legal support as well can be a part of this. But just in general, there's going to be a lot of support that you're typically going to get. And you're going to receive a lot of like cultural and theological, things, which makes sense if you're watching this video. It's another example of you receiving something that is very just culturally different, but also very philosophical, and very hopefully beautiful to you. So I hope you enjoyed this, you Venus and Sagittarius. If you guys are interested in looking at anything with me, I have all my links down below for those videos, as well as my website and anything like that. Obviously, if you guys like this video, please like it, comment, share, subscribe. All those things are going to help me out. This is what I'd love to do. I enjoy just sitting down here and talking with all of you about astrology, because this video series has been so long, and it has been such a beautiful thing to be doing. I'm so grateful to be kind of in the home stretch here, and I appreciate all of you that have watched these, that will watch these. And like I said, I said this in every other video, but if this video helps anybody, I hope it's you, and I hope it just helps one person that'll make this video and this time worth it. So thank you so much for watching this. If you have your Venus in Sag, if you have your Venus in 9th house, I would recommend checking over there, and I'll see you guys in the Venus 9th house portion, and I'll see all of you in the next video, where we talk about specifically Saturn and Sag, and Saturn 9th house, which is going to be a really fun one in and of itself. But yeah, so let's go into specifically in this video what Venus means in the 9th house. Okay, so we have Venus in the 9th house. So Venus in the 9th house is going to have a very positive, typically, relationship as it relates to the relationships that you have in your life, that are mentors, that are teachers, that are people within your life that are typically feminine, as well as is very Venusian. Artists are going to be there, philosophical artists as well, painters, anyone that has a Venusian kind of lifestyle. Even lawyers are going to be an aspect of this as well. So Venus here can have quite a positive effect on the native in specific, because it's in a pretty nice house. It's in a house that does support the ascendant really, really well. And Venus up at the top of the sky also does quite well, because it is pretty high up there, and it is pretty visible in that regard. Obviously, it's important to see what sign Venus is in, as well as where Venus is at, with aspects, things of that nature, because Venus is, it's overall going to be a positive planet here. It is going to bring a lot more of your personal values up to the forefront. So your personal values are definitely going to be impacted by the mentors, by the religion, by the laws that are governing you. But then also your relationships are going to kind of be interwoven into your specific belief system. And it's important to kind of differentiate those, understand those. Once again, Venus in the ninth house says the Venus in Sag portion. There's an aspect of it where there's like a foreign partner, like pretty likely with this, and going after and having a relationship that is someone of a different culture. That can definitely be seen here. I am going to say as well, I have spoken about a lot of Venus signs prior to this Venus sign. So I have all those videos down below in that playlist, so you should check those out if you have your Venus in any other sign that's prior to Sagittarius, because I speak about those more specifically, obviously, in those videos, as opposed to what I'm going to talk about here when I talk about the ninth house, because Venus can play out very, very different ways. Also, of course, if you have your Venus, if you're a Libra rising or a Taurus rising, going to be quite important here in a lot of different ways. So that would mean that if you have your Venus in Capricorn, it's going to be quite important, as well as if you have your Venus in Gemini in the ninth house, that it's going to have quite a lot of importance there as well. Because of the fact that Venus is going to be your chart ruler in those examples, and I'll get to those when I get to them, when I kind of go in the order that I've kind of laid out here as I do these. But if you have your Venus in Gemini in the ninth, or if you have your Venus in Capricorn in the ninth, a lot more importance than normal. And then what I wanted to say as well is that Venus in the ninth, it's really important to look to see what's the ruler of that Venus, because Venus is going to do different things in different signs and houses, but to kind of understand the bigger picture, you look to see what Venus's ruler is doing as well. So Venus in the ninth is going to have a lot of different connections to religious kind of authorities, to legal authorities, to connections that are bigger than them, right? Politics, worldview. Your worldview is going to be really important with Venus in the ninth house, and your relationships are definitely going to impact that worldview. And everyone's probably like, yeah, that's true. Like, that's true for everybody, but it's especially true for Venus in the ninth house, because their relationships and their worldview and their belief system are very much interwoven, as well as their finances. There's something here with Venus in the ninth that's specifically to publishing, and publishing your thoughts, kind of getting into journalism. There could be an aspect with that with Venus in the ninth house, especially if you are like a Venus in Capricorn in the ninth, or even Venus in Gemini, either of those. You could be a really great journalist, partially because that's your chart ruler. So that becomes you literally going to the ninth house of journalism and higher education and those sorts of things. So there could be an aspect there as well. Now, Venus in like a Martian ruled sign is going to be very different, because Venus does not like to be in a Martian ruled sign, because it has to kind of do things. It has to kind of go against the peace and not and kind of understand that peace is not always a part of the process. And Venus in like Aries, Venus in Scorpio are going to have a lot of kind of cultural kind of things they're going to want to fight for in a lot of ways here. And Venus in the ninth, there's definitely going to be like a battle with their specific mentors or their teachers or their worldview or their religious kind of upbringing, and like why they're going to school as well. There could be some interesting things, specifically with Venus in the ninth. A lot of things that I could tend to see here are legal dues, legal fees, or school kind of funding. There could be a lot of stuff here with Venus in the ninth house, just as an overarching theme. There's a lot of things around, what do I do with my money? How do I spend it on school? How do I get those loans? Those sort of things. You can see that also with like Venus in the eighth house, but specifically in the ninth, that's where we have, in regards to money in the ninth house, this is where we're going to be spending money on travel, on passports, on citizenship, on legal issues, on schooling, like going and really studying something. And that's why I think with Venus and a Martian ruled sign, there's a lot of like really like fighting for that. And this is where you could see with Venus in the ninth of a really deep kind of I don't really want to say struggle, but it can be with funding your own kind of schooling and your own mentors and your own kind of study as well. There could be some interesting things with that, with those two. Venus and Scorpio in the ninth definitely has more of a intensity to it. Obviously, if you have Venus and Scorpio, watch those videos, because that's going to help you understand the intensity of your own relationships and your own like values in that regard. But there's like a definitely typically a feminine mentor, feminine relationship that's pretty intense there. And then I'm moving on from Venus in a Martian world sign. We then have Venus in a Venus world sign. So this is going to obviously do quite well because Venus is in its own sign. It's going to kind of protect that house. It's going to protect that worldview, could protect those cultures. So you could see here with Venus in Taurus or in Libra where there's almost a deep cultural kind of family value that's really kind of brought upon them. And their relationships become a lot more prominent in the development of their specific worldview and their specific cultural kind of connections. There could be like a very intense, with Venus and Taurus, it's more of like the family's values are really prominent, versus Venus and Libra, it's more of like who you marry that has a very intense cultural kind of connection, or they kind of open your worldview in a lot of different ways. So you can see with Venus in its own sign here, it's going to kind of elevate and make Venus do what Venus does in those specific signs. So Venus in Libra in the ninth, very prominent for lawyers or anything in the legal field. And then Venus in Taurus in the ninth, this is more of like the actual like academic teachers, or the ones that maybe their specific family really wants them to go to school for this thing, because we live in a long-winded, history of doctors or of anesthesiologists or of whatever it may be, right? It could be an aspect there. And then Venus in like the moon sign can also have a quality of that as well, where there's this like, I need to do this for my family. I need to go to school for my family. I need to go to school for like the one to like change the values of my family by being the first one to graduate or whatever it may be. That could be a part with Venus and Cancer. Venus and Leo is a little bit different in that regard, because Venus and Leo has kind of a me first kind of thing. So it can have this kind of like very showy way about it. So this is where you could see like talent coaches, people that are like, as well as Venus and Leo in the ninth, it can have this quality of being a teacher, because that's something that you can really, really see with Leo in the ninth in general, not just Venus and Leo in the ninth, but Leo in the ninth has this like very academic teacher. I'm on a podium, I'm speaking, I am the one that is, the authority in this. I'm sharing my light, I'm sharing my opinion, I'm sharing what I'm passionate about, what I love, and then teaching it to an audience, right? That's something you could see with Venus in the ninth house in Leo, more specifically than anything. Those are the ones I would really see that are more prominently teachers and professors and like philosophers and those sorts of things. And they typically have Venus in the ninth typically has a pretty deep love of cultural things and religious things or spiritual things and different kind of philosophical conversations. They really enjoy them. And then Venus in Mercury ruled signs. So Venus in Gemini, like I said earlier, this is your chart ruler, so really important here. Because when we put Venus in Gemini in the ninth house, this is you, yourself, being put into the ninth house. So you could definitely be like a court reporter, very niche, but very specific. Journalism as well. Like there's a lot of journalism and that's more on the Venus in Gemini than is the Venus in Capricorn. Venus in Capricorn is a different kind of avenue with the chart ruler being in Capricorn, because it's going to take some time and it's going to be more business oriented. Venus in Gemini in the ninth can still do that, but it's going to have more of a, like, I just want to share my story, I want to talk about this stuff, which is why journalism can be a thing, or just kind of being like the one that collects a bunch of different things about their life, about the life of others, There could be a lot of qualities of Venus and Gemini that I think is really cool with this specific alignment, where they become the one that is teaching their family's story, their sibling's story. There's a lot of like journalism, and even investigative journalism as well, especially if you are a Gen Z and you have Venus and Gemini opposite Pluto. There's a lot of like investigative journalism qualities with that I could see, because Venus in Gemini really wants to find a bunch of information, and being a Libra rising, you're going to have that Venus in, Gemini in that ninth house, which is literally you being brought to the ninth house of higher learning education, but it's in Gemini. So it's like you're going and find all the information, you're going and find all the different things to say. And so it's a really prominent chart. I really like this one. If you have your Venus in Gemini in the ninth house, I'd love to hear your story, especially if you also have it opposite Pluto, because that's pretty powerful. And then Venus in Virgo in the ninth, this is obviously going to be more difficult because Venus is fallen here, so it does have a little bit of a difficulty with, once again, specifically the financial obligations towards schooling and towards something they believe in. Because Venus in Virgo, they can kind of believe in anything, really. They can kind of believe in a bunch of different things, and a bunch of different things are valuable to them, but it's about how it's applicable. And not every relationship is going to be perfectly applicable, and not everything you study is going to be perfectly applicable. So that's why Venus in Virgo, maybe there's going to be a lot of difficulty in getting that schooling, getting that funding, getting that truth of really knowing exactly what it is that you really love and enjoy and want to study. and what really resonates with you and what really is something that you really feel drawn to teach and drawn to study and learn and get involved with. There's also, once again, some legal stuff here with Venus and Virgo in the ninth house, where there's like just a legal kind of connection of things in that regard, of trying to just unravel it in a lot of ways. So you could make yourself a really great lawyer as well through what you've had to deal with, and you can understand a lot of really positive things, and be really, really diligent and really organized and methodical with how you approach higher learning, legal things, studying, teaching, learning. Those sorts of things are going to be really important. And also your relationships, there's going to be some really critical stuff there with the relationships in that regard. So I love that. I really do love that placement there. I think the Venus and Virgo, there's a lot of power you guys have, because you guys have a lot of you really want to ground that belief. So don't get too hung up on the beliefs of your loved ones and your partner as much as you would with Venus and Virgo. So there could be like an over analysis of the partner's values and the partner's belief system and their like religious kind of connections, and you'll never find one that's exactly yours, because no one's belief system is the exact same. Even if you're identically raised, you're gonna have different belief systems about why things are the way they are. So that's my little caveat for Venus and Virgo. Obviously, if Venus and Virgo, watch that video, please, because I think it's really important. And then Venus in a Jupiter ruled sign. So obviously Venus in Sag is this one here, Venus in Pisces the other one. If you have Venus in Pisces in the ninth house, this is a pretty like gets lost in, like, this is very psychic, very mediumship, very much like intuitively connected. Pisces in the ninth has a very like overly connected to every kind of worldview. And Venus here, it is great. It does really well here, but it almost doesn't know limits. And that's, I think, the part of what Venus in Pisces versus Venus in Virgo can kind of struggle with, because Venus in Pisces is so expansive and it's so like limitless and boundaryless, and it just kind of loves and loves and loves, because it's connected to something higher. But that's why I think Venus in Pisces in the ninth can have a really strong inclination towards mediumship, towards psychic abilities, towards healing arts, things of that nature. But Venus in the ninth in Pisces, it just has a very positive kind of quality when it comes to mentorships, and typically, but there is a sense of losing yourself in a mentor in that regard. So be aware of that too, of how that might play out, and don't find the way to have boundaries with the Pisces. That's Venus and Pisces, this whole thing. I'll talk about that when I get to that video, of course, but very, very prominent here, very powerful. And then we finally have Venus in Saturn ruled signs of Capricorn and Aquarius. So obviously the Venus in Capricorn, this is a really big deal, because you are ruled by Venus, you are a Taurus rising with Venus in the ninth house. And this is where, like I said, you can have like a publishing career, specifically speaking about, and you can make a lot of money from that, like a lot of money from that, in so many different ways. With Venus ruling your chart in the ninth house, you can make and in Capricorn, it's gonna take some time, hard work, figuring out what you believe in, why your beliefs are that way, grounding it, that's gonna help you. But that will definitely pay off in the long run, when you're able to kind of ground that, understand what you're spending your money on too. Be very very diligent on what you're spending your money on in that way. Really, really powerful. And then Venus in Aquarius, really different here. This is very like group kind of legal support. Very interesting group dynamics with Venus and Aquarius here in the ninth house, and the belief systems of society, you kind of follow them, you kind of follow trends. Venus and Aquarius is probably one of the most prominent placements for people to get into astrology, and in the ninth house it's very like that. But there's a fracturing with Aquarius that I'll talk about when I get to that Venus Aquarius video. But there's a sense of like breaking apart, kind of changing stuff, shifting stuff, that Venus and Aquarius needs to understand. And in the ninth house, it can have this this really kind of shake up with its belief system. So like maybe you could be in a cultural kind of system, or go towards something in school, and then it completely shifts, right? Or you go and you're learning something from a mentor, and you realize that that's not the truth, and you get some information that just you connect it, and you're like, that it's not right, that doesn't connect to that, it's not applicable, right? So that's something you can see with Venus and Aquarius. It's really powerful in that regard as well. So yeah, that's a lot of Venuses. I went over all of them very briefly, but overall Venus in the ninth, it has a quality of really enriching the belief system and finding your own belief system, your own meaning, your own faith, why you believe in what you believe in. And having meaning in life is a big thing. It's a hard thing to get. You know, and Venus in various signs is going to do different stuff. You know, Venus in Pisces, they're going to just find a value system based off of a sense of media or a fantasy novel that they're in, and that can be what they're connected to, right? And the Venus in Virgo is like nothing ever fits, right? Nothing ever fits in all these things because the goalpost is always moving, right? Venus and other signs are going to do different things, and so, but ultimately, Venus in the ninth wants you to understand the value of your belief, of your meaning, of why you are here. There's a reason why you are here. It is obvious, or else you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't exist if you didn't have a meaning. And it doesn't need to be this huge, grand thing. Yes, it can be. It very much can be. But it can also simply be, you know, going and living and learning these lessons that are very, very simple or very long or very, very small or minute, but they're huge on a macro level or even on a micro level. It's really about that kind of that lesson and that meaning that you have. There is meaning behind what you're doing, I promise you. And you might not find it right away with Venus in the ninth house, but your relationships and what you spend your money on are going to tell you that for sure. So keep going after those things, keep spending, keep enjoying, but also really, really question the meaning behind why you're doing what you're doing. Why am I pursuing this? Why do I love this person, right? Why do I want to date this person? Why do I want to spend my money on this? Why do I want to study this, right? Always ask why, always explore with Venus in the ninth house, and continue exploring, continue learning, continue growing. That's all you can ever do and all you can ever ask. And if a Venus in the ninth house or Venus in Sag person is not growing and not studying, there's other stuff going on in the chart, right? Obviously, you need to look at the entirety of the chart. And if you're interested in anything with me, all that stuff is down below. Feel free to check all those things out. Obviously, that playlist is down there. And of course, thank you for watching this video. And if you like this, please like it. Please comment, share, subscribe. All of those things are going to help me. I love doing this. This is one of my favorite things to do here. And it means the world to me. And if this video helps even one of you, that means so much to me. So I hope this helped any of you, and I will see you all in the next video where we talk about what Saturn means in Sagittarius and Saturn means in the ninth house. So thank you, and I will see all of you in the next one.